guys are something special, you know that? God has had this plan for a long time. We're really excited to be here. Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. I'm sorry, we live in Nicaragua, and if you still have your clothes on at the end of the service because of the volume of the speakers, you are very, very lucky indeed. So, yeah, we're here today. We're Assemblies of God missionaries in Nicaragua. We're from Australia. Liz calls herself Australian now. And we are really excited to be here today. This is a lesson in flexibility because we planned on singing that song sort of at the end, so that was really interesting, but I think it's given you a bit of a taste if you were looking at the pictures at exactly what we're about. So my name is Jed and this is my wife Elizabeth. Do you want to just use this one? Okay. And so I'd like to tell you a little bit about us. There's a PowerPoint if you want to pop up a photo on the PowerPoint slide.
There you go.
Yep, that shows us and our family. We have 4 kids. Francesca, who is here. I don't need to point them all out. And so she's 14, about to turn 15. We've got Lorenzi, who's just on the left-hand side with the little boy sitting on her lap. And she's 12. Cesny is standing next to me, and I'm wearing the exact same t-shirt, just so that you can know everyone in the picture. And then there's Raphael, and he's in the green next to Liz, and Liz's sister's in the photo. But then we also have 3 foster children. There's Billy in the front, and he's got a wild little smile there, a little grin. And Billy to your right-hand side, and Brian to your right-hand side, and then Brian's brother is Oliver, and he is sitting on the left-hand side. And then we've got some random guys that we picked up from the Mercado Oriental in Nicaragua, and Jocasta, who is on your left, she has been a volunteer with us for a few months, and she's from Australia. She has nothing wrong with her brain. She does have face disfigurement, but she is a beautiful soul and very much a part of our family, and we love her dearly. So I'd just like to start today by just sharing a little bit about us and about how we came to do what we are now doing. I was born in Sydney. My parents were missionaries in Papua New Guinea, and they were like ministers of a church, a congregational church, kind of like a Methodist church. But they were spirit-filled, and when I was about 8 years old, we left Sydney and we moved to Canberra, which is the capital of Australia, and I was homeschooled. So, yeah, we were in YWAM. We were able to travel around Asia and Europe and the US with our family because we were homeschooled. So we moved around with YWAM. And then when I was 18, I decided I needed to have some sort of formal documentation to say that I was normal. So I moved to Sydney by myself, and I attended the Hillsong Church for a couple of years. Has anyone ever heard of the Hillsong Church? Yeah, so we were there for a couple of years, and it was in that time that I sort of wandered away from the Lord and then came really quickly back to the Lord and recommitted to my heart to the Lord. And it's at that stage that I met Liz, and I'll just let her share about herself now.
Okay, so about 21 years ago I was born. Just kidding. A little bit longer than that, but I wish. I was going to pretend I was Irish and be like, top of the morning to you. How are you doing?
That's the only phrase she knows.
That's all I know in Irish. So I was born in England, but I always wanted to be American. So every time I'd go everywhere, I'd be like, oh my gosh, gee whiz, I'm from America. And yeah, most people knew I wasn't, so. But I was born to a Christian family, and I'm second of 5. And I really enjoyed growing up in the Christian family. We were not that well off, so my parents were missionaries too. And it was that time that God really showed me that He was my provider. So as a young kid, I really saw God was my provider. And at 14, I really met with God in a major way. And I knew that I wanted to live a life that was radical for the kingdom, right? But teenage years came, and sadly, I lost focus. And it was a time where I decided that I didn't want to be a Christian anymore. And I had some friends that were not Christians. They were into other faiths. They were Muslim friends, and I had a JW friend and a Mormon friend because I went to a secular school. And I started thinking, why am I a Christian? Am I a Christian just because my mom and dad are Christians? Like, that's not cool. Because I would look at my friends, and she was a JW because her parents were JWs, and he was a Mormon because his parents were Mormons. So it made me start really thinking, and I lost a bit of focus. But God turned me around in a major way when I was 18. And, you know, he really brought me back on track and was just like, I am God. You know, there is only one God, and it is me. And from that point on, I just went crazy for the kingdom, right? And I knew that I wasn't meant to just live this life, you know, this mundane life, that I was meant to go somewhere. So in YWAM, Spain, I went on a short-term mission trip in YWAM, Spain, and that's where God really captured my heart again for him, and reminded me of what he had put into my heart when I was 14 years old, and said that that hadn't changed and that he wanted me to go forward for him. So I prayed about what to do and where to go, and I ended up moving to Australia when I was 19, and I met this crazy fella. And you know, God said to me, your life will never be the same again, and it has never been the same again since. This guy. It's pretty crazy. So, oh, this is me. So we met in YWAM, and we did a DTS. YWAM is an organization for missionaries, the youth with a mission, and we met each other there, and we ended up getting married after 4 or 5 months after knowing each other. It was pretty crazy. My parents were pulling their hair out. They're like, what have you done? You've spoiled the blood. We sent those Australians away, and now you're bringing them back.
We go somewhere completely different now, but I'll just keep it right here.
So yeah, we ended up in Hillsong Church for about 2 years. I was there for 2 years. Jeb was a little bit longer. And we just loved their mission focus and their worship heart. And anyway, we ended up moving to New York to do exchanges. So we ended up living in America for 2 years. And I can tell you, it was the biggest culture shock of my life. And that's where I did practice, like, hi, I'm an American. And they all looked at me like, you're weird.
If ever we're in trouble overseas, we just say, I demand to speak to my American consulate.
So we were back and forth all over the globe. We tried to live in England, and Jed could not handle that. I'm sure you would understand that, being Irish, right? So we ended up moving back to Australia, and then we started to get jobs and live a life that was kind of mundane again, and not what God had called us to do. And yet inside our hearts, it was burning to go out onto the mission field, because we'd really been called to go out there. And we decided to put that out to the Lord and take a step, and we moved to Mexico with our 4 kids, and we lived in Mexico for 2 years. And it was a really good time of growth. Our kids learned how to speak Spanish. Like, before that time, they didn't even know what hola meant. They had never met Dora the Explorer before, so they didn't grow up on that. So that we didn't learn Spanish there, but they did, and that was really neat, because now we've got like 4 little translators that we pull around all over the place.
Because we still haven't learned Spanish, so there's our first prayer point.
Yeah, our kids are like, Mom, why do you try and speak Spanish? It's so embarrassing.
I was saying last night, sometimes we speak in English and they translate for us, and then sometimes we speak in Spanish and they still translate for us, and that's kind of embarrassing.
So
like they know what we're trying to say, you know what I mean?
So in Mexico, we were teaching at a school for kids that wanted to learn English. And we ended up teaching the narco kids, which was quite an eye-opener. And there are many stories to tell about that. But after 2 years, we were not sure what to do, and we really felt that Mexico was just kind of like a stepping stone. But we really both had hearts to go further into a third world country. And we kind of prayed about where we should go, and then started bashing down all the doors. And we were looking into Cuba and Honduras and Guatemala, and then Nicaragua came up, and it was kind of our last choice, really. I want to sound more spiritual about like God called me to Nicaragua, but no, it didn't happen like that. And so everything else closed, and we were like, okay, it's Nicaragua. So off we went to Nicaragua to teach, and there it just captured our hearts, and we just knew after a couple of weeks, this is where we're meant to be, you know.
Talk a bit, now you know a bit about us, I'd just like to talk briefly about Nicaragua. Nicaragua used to be a great country in the 1920s, I believe. They were very industrious and, you know, I don't want to say they were like the US, but, you know, they had a lot of money and, well, wealth, and the country was a country that's moving ahead. Who here sort of has any idea about where Nicaragua is? Does everyone know it's in Central America? Okay. And do you know much about the history? No? Yes? Anyone?
He's asking this because a lot of people are like, oh, where in Africa are you? It's not in Africa.
Okay, that would be the British people asking. So it used to be a great country, but then they installed a dictator, and the dictator was Western backed. And I do have to say, in terms of media, you have to kind of sometimes sort of listen with half an ear, you know what I mean, to really sort of understand. I know the American people are very gracious and kind, and that translates a little bit into the media, whereas, you know, well, we killed our princess, didn't we, Liz? So the British know how to do journalism. So they had 40 years under this cruel dictator, and he used to torture people and he would kill them. He was really a very cruel man, but he traded with the West and gave them what they wanted, and was really, the diplomatic relations have never been as good with the West as when under Somoza. So basically there was a movement called the Sandinista movement, and it started off as like a resistance movement, and it was backed by Fidel in Cuba, and, well, just really him, oh, and the Russians, of course, at the time. And so they had, you know, a turbulent 10 years where they seized the power of the government, and it was during the time of the Cold War. And so the US backed the Contras who had been under Somoza and who wanted to take back the power of the country. And then the Russians came in, and they were sort of wanting to get in everywhere at the time. So they backed the actual government of the country. And until they took over power, the Sandinistas didn't even know what they wanted to do. So when they seized power, they were all, you know, at odds with what to do with the country. Some people wanted to have elections, some people wanted it to be a communist state, and that's what it became very quickly. Unfortunately, due to the war and due to communism, stacks of people left straight away because with the price setting, it became very inefficient. That's the good part of a capitalist economy. The prices, you know, demand, supply, it sort of meets you where you need to be met. Under the communist system, they tell you what to sell your products at, and oftentimes it costs more to make the goods than what they could sell them for. So a lot of people left the country. Goodness, now I'm losing my place. Hurricanes, earthquakes, stacks and stacks of natural disasters, and they still have them all the time, so it keeps them very poor. In 1990, the country held an election. They finally ended the war. Nicaraguans were really fed up with it because only Nicaraguans were really dying, and in the end they were like, well, we didn't like communism in the first place, so why are we sort of fighting and being made to fall? So they installed their pro-West leader, who was, you know, immediately made it top priority to repair relations with the US and Britain and Germany and what have you. Unfortunately, after 15 years, Nicaragua is still the poorest Spanish-speaking country in the world, and they, not only the world, they're the second poorest after only Haiti in the Western Hemisphere. So Nicaragua voted back in their socialist government, the Sandinistas. They changed their name from communist to socialist and their colour from red to pink. So that was just delightful. And they were back in power again. But unfortunately, when he took over, basically the West pulled out. So, you know, there are some aid agencies still there, but basically the US had money earmarked for roads and infrastructure, and they said, because he wouldn't allow them, the US and the UN, to come in and monitor the election. So the US pulled out, but this dude, when the government changed, he put a whole lot of stuff in his own name. So he's a billionaire now, this guy who was a communist. Yeah, the Sandinista leader, Daniel Ortega. So the only person that it really is hurting now is the children of Nicaragua. So, yeah, Nicaragua doesn't care. They don't mind that the US has pulled out, and a lot of European countries and, you know, diplomatic relations with Australia are all but gone. And I know a lot of you think, well, who cares, it's only Australia, but I care. As an Australian, like, it's important that countries work together. And basically their new friends are Iran, Cuba, Venezuela, North Korea, China. So if that doesn't paint a picture for you, I don't know what will. Yeah, so now I'd just like to hand it back to Liz, and she's going to talk about what we're doing.
Yeah, so as I said, we first lived in Mexico and then we moved to Nicaragua, and we thought Mexico was pretty poor, and it was a bit of a shock for our kids to see poverty, but then when we moved to Nicaragua, it was a huge, you know, eye-opener. And Mexico has got such a rich culture, you know, and their music and their dance and their food, and when we moved to Nicaragua, it was kind of devastating because it's being robbed from them, it's being taken away from them, and the hopelessness that are in the eyes of the people is just sometimes a little bit unbearable to be a part of, and to see. But you know, Nicaragua is definitely on our hearts, and like I said, after a couple of weeks, and we've lived all over the place, like Australia, England, America, Mexico, and now in Nicaragua, but Nicaragua just really has captured our hearts, and the people in Nicaragua too. And there is not a lot to do there. As young people, there really isn't a lot to get involved in. There are movie theatres, but they're for like people that have got the money. If you don't have the money, you don't go see a movie. But apart from that, there's really nothing else. There's no ice skating, there's no roller skating, there's no bowling alleys. There's nothing really. There's not any community centres, so they don't even have soccer balls, and they'll grab a coconut and start kicking that around, you know, they're very resourceful. So Nicaragua just was put on our hearts, and up until this point I've been teaching high school English to, I would say, rich Nicaraguans and missionary kids in the school, and although I really loved that and God has used that, it hasn't been my passion, you know. I really wanted to work with kids that don't have the opportunity, and here I was working with kids that had all the opportunity in the world, and God really used that and allowed me to share my heart with them, because their attitude towards the poor is atrocious. And I'd get comments like, oh, Mrs. Brian, those people that work the traffic lights, they're rich. They just try and rip us off, you know. They really do have great homes, and they're just scamming people. And that was their attitude towards the poor. And my response was, I don't really see many kids here that work the traffic lights, so...
Missing a limb or in a wheelchair.
Yeah, so, but you know, my heart was always to work with the poorer kids. And meanwhile, while I was busy at school working, Jed decided to quit his job. He felt God say, you know, finish up teaching and homeschool our kids. So he started homeschooling the kids, and I would come home to crazy things, right? I'd be like, one day someone random just opens my gate, and I'm like, hello, who are you? And he's like, oh, I work here now. I'm like the gardener. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I live here. So Jed was set loose, and he has crazy ideas, and he was like, you know what, we need to start a community center for these kids. There's nothing for them to do except for like sit on the streets and take drugs. They get into really bad stuff, and you know, the pushers are there trying to get them addicted, and so they get addicted and then they start robbing houses because they need to feed their addiction, and they just get into really bad things. So Jed was like, you know, let's open our home up on Friday nights to these people. And I was like, okay, I could do this. And so we opened up our home, like Jen and the kids went horseback riding and started advertising, like, come over to our house, we want you to come, you know. So he's giving us to all these kids that are smashed out on the floor on drugs and alcohol, taking alcohol and stuff. And anyway, Friday night came and we had, how many? Like 320 people come. So 320 kids came to my house, and I was a little bit like, woo, okay, here we go. And we have a pool. God bless us, we have a great house and it's got a pool, and they all just jumped in the pool, and they just had a great old time. We worked out that they couldn't swim after Jed pushed one in and he almost drowned. So it was kind of funny, but so anyway, it just carried on like that. So every Friday night we open up our home, and it is now known as the community center of the town, and it's been a really neat way to connect with the kids and to speak into their lives. And God has just given us such a heart for them. And I want to rewind a little bit, because when Jed and I first got married, it was a bit of a whirlwind, and I got pregnant pretty early on in the marriage, and I had a really bad attitude about it, really bad attitude. I was like, I am so young, I am just coping with marriage, I don't want to be pregnant, like what is this? And you know, I really did have a stinky attitude about it. And anyway, sadly, I lost that baby. I miscarried. And God really used that in a major way in my life, because what I thought was my right to have kids when I wanted to have them suddenly became, you know, this is God gives and He takes away. And it was not my right whenever I wanted to have it. And, you know, God used that experience for me so early on. I think I was 21, right? His desires for me. And how Jed and I are already a family without kids, and the kids are a real blessing. And it really changed the mother heart in me. And suddenly I started popping out all these babies, and you know, boom, 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 one after the other. All my friends were like, wow, we turn around and you're pregnant again, you know. And you know, the mother heart in me, like we've had 4 of our own, and now I just want to have more, but not from myself, but like from the kids that don't have parents, that don't have people that love them or embrace them. And so as we've opened up our home on the Friday nights, you know, we get all sorts of kids come in, and what we really notice is that none of them are being parented. None of them have parents that care, or the ones that do have parents that care, they're too tired because they're so you know, struggling just to feed themselves, that they don't have energy to invest in their kids and you know, talk God stuff into them. So one thing that Friday night really did for me, even though it freaked me out at the start, was that it really enlarged my mother heart for these kids. And now I have, well, this photo doesn't have everybody in, but we have 5 teenage boys now that live with us too, and they all call me mother, which is kind of funny. But
pregnant teen as well.
Yeah, one of the boys got his girlfriend pregnant, and she's now living with us too, so I'll be a grandmother this year. It's crazy. Okay, so we have our Friday nights, and if that was not enough for Jed, he decided that he would open our home up for a school because there were lots of street kids. And
I'm an elementary school teacher, a primary school teacher.
Yeah, so I was like, homeschooling on Friday nights is not enough for you, huh? So he opened up our house, and now it is the community school. And we had like a huge amount of people wanting to put their kids in, so we decided to limit it to 35 kids because that's what we could handle. And at the moment we have 35 kids that come, and they all struggle with malnutrition. They come from very low economic situations. Most of them do not have dads. Their dads have gone off with someone else.
Their house would be about the size of the stage, and every single one of them, the roof leaks if they have a roof, and they don't have a floor. It's just mud.
So even though it's like we are helping them with their education. We find a lot of the times we're helping with their medical, we're helping with their family situations, and we realized that there was a need for the mothers because they're not getting support. And mothers have babies, women have babies very young, so the mothers are very, very young. And we had a friend that had a heart to help the mothers, and so she now has a ministry once a week for the mothers of the school and the community that come. And yeah, we just get involved in a lot of things. So one thing though, there is a local school around the corner, but a lot of our kids that go to our school can't afford to go there. It is a local school, it is free, they say it's free, but there's a lot of other costs involved, and so they have to have a uniform and they have to have a backpack, and Nicaraguans are very proud people, right? So they don't like to ask for anything, and so a lot of the kids that we have are the kids that could not afford a backpack or could not afford to keep up their uniform. And so we try and work with the local school, the principal there, and once a week we go in there and we teach English. And my kids, we believe that the kids should be involved too, and they have their own little ministries. And it's a real blessing to see even Rafi and Billy reading stories to these kids at the local school. And we also go visit the local hospital once a week, and Jed has been a few times to the prisons. So, you know, that's just a little bit about what we're doing right now. And what I love is that we're really connecting with the people, and we really believe in friendship evangelism and getting creative. And we heard about your pizza nights on Wednesday nights, and we just feel so kindred with this church because, you know, you share the same heart as what we have, and to use that as an opportunity to be able to create firm friendships and connections with the kids. We found that with our Friday nights, it's a lot of fun, it's very crazy, and we get crazy stuff happening. Like one day a girl decided she was a little bit hot and wanted to go for a swim, and she took all her clothes off except for her undies, and we were like, oh, hello.
This isn't Europe.
So, you know, we get awkward situations like that happen, right? Because they're not Christians, and it's kind of like, oh, can you put your clothes back on? You know, or we get the drug dealers, or, you know, some people come and they get into bad stuff, but it's messy. When you do stuff like Wednesday night pizza, it's not going to be easy, but God uses that as an opportunity to speak into them. And one thing that God spoke to me about as a mother is, you know, train your children in the way they should go, so when they're old, they will not depart from it. And as a mother, that's what I've really, you know, based my parenting on. And God's just opening my eyes up to be a mother to these kids that come on the Friday night, and to use these opportunities that are a little bit crazy and a little bit messy at times and awkward, but to use those as training times to really talk about what God has for their life and to train them in the way that He wants them to go. So now when these situations come that are awkward and uncomfortable, I love it because it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to speak God into their lives.
I just find that there are so many parallels between our experience and what is happening here, and that's just really wonderful. One thing that's really impacted me is the fact that for one reason or another there are just so many young men who don't have dads, and pretty much the ratio in the community is 9 guys to every 1 girl. So these girls are locked up 23 hours a day. In our community, you're pretty much pregnant at 15 and have had a baby. And so at first I was like, evangelism, like get them in, get them saved. And then like they were just at our house all the time. It wasn't Friday night. You'd sort of wake up and walk out the door and you'd be like, holy moly, good morning, there's 20 people there. And so pretty quickly it became very clear that Jesus sends us out into the world to make disciples. And so that is uncomfortable, and you know, in the West we have our sort of I need my space kind of thing, but I really feel like we have to overlook that at times. And I grew up as a missionary kid, and my dad did overlook that, and too often he was a pastor and whatnot. And so it's really difficult because we have to have the balance of, God first, and then our family is our priority. But our family needs to all be running in the same direction. Amen?
Amen.
We all need to have a heart, the Father's heart for those who are lost and for those who are around us. So we're sort of planning to go back and really take this to the next level, discipleship. I'm going to take 20 of these young fellows and take them to the gym and buy them lunch and breakfast once a week and have a Bible study with them and really kind of keep them accountable, because the youth of today, and I think it's more so in the West, they don't have accountability.